Hi everyone, I'm Chris Stening, Senior Advisor with 8 Advisory, and I'm very pleased today to be here with Nick Rawlings. Nick is the Chief Marketing Officer of Gigaclear, and also with Adam Bradley, one of the partners here at 8 Advisory. So we're talking to Nick about the report that we recently rolled out, and also some of the learning and experience from Gigaclear. So Adam, over to you to start the conversation.
Okay, thanks very much, Chris. And Nick, thanks so much for joining us in the latest of our take-up interviews. I think you've had the chance to look at the white paper we wrote on fibre take-up in the UK, and possibly also some of the interviews we've done with other leaders in the fibre sector. Tell us what your main thoughts and takeaways are from the article.
Well, firstly, it's a very helpful overview of the UK fibre market, both parts actually, particularly the second part on sort of take-up and drivers of take-up is stuff that are readily recognised, live and breathe every day. As Chief Marketing Officer, Gigaclear, really robust, rounded summary of the market, I think. A couple of takeouts for me. The thing which resonated was the idea that driving penetration take-up is really about long-term strategy, not just short-term tactics, that the dynamics of the market and indeed kind of consumer adoption, particularly when you think about customers in contract, is about having a consistent approach to your customers, to the marketplace, that allows you to win penetration and win customers over time. It's not about a single tactic or kind of monthly or quarterly campaign. Reality is that less than 10% of the potential consumers out there are really addressable every month because so many are within a contract. So you need this kind of consistency of approach to win in the long term rather than just the short term win. It teed up nicely that kind of choice, I guess, for a lot of operators, at least trade-off between wholesale and resale approaches to the market. We'll maybe get on to talk a little bit about Gigaclear's philosophy on this. I think on one hand, you've got the allure of a wholesale offering, which brings lots of ISPs to the party when it comes to driving take-up, versus a retail one, which starts with a smaller entity, but puts maybe more control in the hands of the ISP to make their own luck and drive their own timescales for take-up and their own strategies. So that was interesting. And then lots of good stuff on all the classic go-to-market disciplines. I think there's maybe a bit that precedes the report, which is super relevant. We're in understanding success of take-up, which is about where the network is built in the first place, the perspective of how you choose where to build, whether that is a competitive overbuilt area or not, what kind of customer profile you look to build to, how you think about the creation of the network, basically. That has quite a lot of bearing on everything that follows, which the report picks up from, but that maybe is an element that can be brought out more, maybe to kind of think about the context of where the network is, because I think between the different altnets out there, there's some very different takes on the approach to selecting a market and whether overbuild or not, urban or not, is the preference. That was first thoughts on the report.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you. So I think, Nick, you've touched on some of the points in what you just said. But if we think of the levers and approaches that Altnet might use to drive take-up up towards the levels that we highlighted in the report of someone like Openreach, what do you think the main actions and levers would be in the context of your strategy?
From my point of view, there's a couple of things. That first piece around selecting where the network is built is particularly important to us. So our philosophy, we are on a mission to target rural and ultra-rural communities, really, with our fibre offering. So we want to take fibre to areas where there is none today. And we really want to avoid overbuild in the long term as well. We see limited benefits for our investors, or indeed a lower benefit for our customers, in being one of many fibre networks there. That's not to say we have zero overbuild, but we've meticulously tried to minimize the risk of that in what we do and have a very clear build strategy about building contiguous networks, but in ultra-rural places where consumers historically have been maybe not favoured by the incumbent in terms of the levels of broadband speed and service available. So we're addressing a sort of more a latent consumer need there for faster broadband than exists in towns if they've got decent FTTC speeds. So that selection process of where we go is really important to our strategy. We want to be unique. We want to serve rural consumers. Then when it comes to how we approach the market, sort of picking up on those similar points to a report, really. We've tried to take a long-term view and one that's sort of founded in customer needs and customer insight. We're principally a retailer. We do a little bit of wholesale, but we've built really a retail business that starts with the idea that to be successful in winning consumers as a challenger brand, you need to build a brand, right? So there's some classic marketing disciplines required at the outset to maybe not just shortcut to the kind of functional product benefits, but to set out a stall of who we are, what our mission is, to make people aware of us, to do the hard yards of building brand awareness, and then brand consideration in our communities, so people see us as a preferred brand to buy from rather than just a cheap alternative to what they've got. I think in our philosophy, this idea of building a brand for the long term and trying to use that as a point of competitive advantage is important. And I think the third element then comes down to execution. The job of take-up actually becomes very specific when you think of things like channel performance, targeting of offers, price setting, return on marketing investment. So we're very data-driven. We're very focused on the execution in our channels. What can we do to help improve our online buying journey so we get a greater conversion level? How can we train our telesales people to deliver better levels of yield? How can we fine-tune our offering and proposition to the customer based on the data we've got to kind of optimize take-up there? How do we think about our marketing communication channels and how to improve the execution and frequency of those to get the right return on investments? These are quite generic answers, right? Because I think while full fiber is a unique, a beautiful thing, it's still actually about addressing consumer needs and building a go-to-market plan that is good at all of the classic disciplines, almost agnostic of whether you're selling fiber or other things. So brand, channel, and execution right through the go-to-market plan.
So you know that we obviously interviewed Ben from Oggy, and of course Oggy and Gigaclear share a similar sort of investor pool. And Ben talked a lot about sort of, as you have, about building the brand, about where do you build in order to get great take-up. So, Gigaclear have clearly got really encouraging take-up and you've been building for a long time. What else is there in there for you that is really the secret of success? Is it just about execution or is there something else you've not mentioned?
I think the other advantage we've got at our scale still is the fact that we don't just target rural areas, we show up in rural areas. So we've got quite a granular community focus in how we go about things. Actually, as a scale operation, we don't do field selling. Actually, we don't do door-to-door, which is a slightly contrarian view on the market, but we do invest in community engagement in people who, and the report talks about this very articulately, the idea of needing to engage consumers, not just at the point of ready for service, but significantly before that, and individual residents as well as kind of, community power brokers like parish councils and local Facebook groups to help localize your pitch and appeal. And I take a lot of pride in the fact that we do still show up community by community. We enable a community hub, free access point in every community we go to as part of our deal of building there, because the build, even if skillfully done, does come with a little bit of disruption and some traffic lights from time to time. How to kind of start right at the outset with good quality community engagement and then follow that through all the way through life. We're trying to retain a presence in the community after RFS through things like local sponsorships and other community initiatives that mean that we sort of stay relevant at a local level. So yes, there's a sort of a broadcast marketing machine that is looking at the data and the kind of what we can do online, etc. But that's sort of married with a sort of a hyper-local approach. And having spent a bit of time with the Oggy team and Ben, I know they very much believe in that philosophy as well. They're great at that stuff. So yeah, we believe similar things to the Oggy guys on that.
So one of the things, Nick, that we sort of pulled out in our report, this might feel a bit different for Gigaclear. When you look at the average penetration of the Altnets, it's about half that of the average that BT have seen. Now, I know that Gigaclear are in a slightly different position, but any sort of thoughts on why that is and what might need to be different?
Well, I think actually it's hard to do an apples for apples comparison of Altnets versus BT Openreach. The incumbency benefit that Openreach have got with all of the major ISPs on the platform already, and the ability not to have to sell and switch a new customer, but to effectively upgrade their product, it's just such a different dynamic than if you are a kind of small, medium-sized Altnet starting with 0 client ISPs on your platform and having to win every single customer as a competitive switch in the marketplace. So you might say, tongue-in-cheek maybe slightly, that why isn't BT Openreach's penetration much higher, actually, given that enormous incumbency benefit they've got? almost all the customers in the UK on their broadband network, why have not more switched already to full fibre? So it's a really harsh comparison to make then against the context of an altnet. The report touches on then some of the other difficulties of comparison about sort of age of network cohorts and all of that sort of things. And likely a lot of altnets have got a much more recently built network, which is only just going live, so they haven't as much time to sell. So I think there's some inherent difficulties in making the comparison. We've done pretty well on penetration. We're kind of humble. We don't think we've got all the answers. We don't think we've got it cracked, but we have focused as a sort of vertically integrated ISP with our build to try and have a very clear end-to-end approach of where we build a network, which consumers we then seek to win onto our network, and then following that through with a sort of retail-centric approach and a business unit in my area, which is singly focused on penetration. So having penetration as a clear objective definitely helps. I think even when you do that really well, there are some incumbency benefits that Openreach has, which still make it difficult to catch up even after the kind of fact they've got all the customers on their network to begin with. As an industry, overbuild is problematic, and it particularly benefits, it has a cooling effect on the altnets in favour of Openreach. The spectre of Openreach arriving, I think, does have an impact on investors' appetite clearly to go into certain communities. It kind of kills the retail business cases for penetration quite often. So a greater degree of transparency and sort of adherence to plans on where people are building, not just Openreach, but across all of us, would be beneficial, I think. I don't see that really benefiting UK PLC in the long term to have 3 or 4 networks in a particular geography. Being clear on where people are going to build and being able to stick to that. I think in the sales and marketing space, there's been some interesting publications from Ofcom about the advertising of fibre broadband. And I think this is another incumbency benefit, that if you already have a large FTTC base, calling everything fibre is probably pretty neat, actually, because you can wrap everybody up in the illusion that they are on one of many kind of new generation products. And it makes the job harder for an altnet to explain the rational product difference between a part fibre and full fibre products. So in terms of things that could change, just being more clear and transparent on the different technologies available and not prodding consumer confusion would be useful. I think that would aid altnets making a more straightforward case about the kind of product difference and the benefits of full fibre.
Nick, thanks so much for your insights and comments. I really appreciate your time. It's very, very interesting to get a view from a rural focused operator compared to some of the other operators that we've had on this series. Again, really appreciate your time. I look forward to speaking to you again, maybe at some point in the future, about Gigaclear's progress and driving better take-up of the product. So thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Adam.
Cheers. Bye-bye.